If you found me, they'll erase you too. The voice came through 3 inches of sealed steel, faint enough that Ethan Cole almost blamed the failing ventilation system. Orison, 9 had been making strange noises for the last hour. Warning sirens pulsed through the evacuation deck. Amber lights flashed against sweating pipes. Somewhere beneath Ethan's boots, a coolant pump coughed twice and stopped. The station shuddered. His wrist display updated in hard red letters. Core stability, 18 minutes. Perfect, Ethan muttered. He was 34, exhausted, and carrying a tool bag that weighed nearly 40 pounds. He was also supposed to be heading toward Shuttle Bay 3. Instead, he stood in an abandoned refugee processing corridor because he had heard 3 knocks behind a storage door. Knock, knock, knock. There it was again. Ethan set down his bag. Hello. Silence. Then a weak scrape. The door's access panel showed locked by administrative order. Ethan pulled his maintenance key from his belt. The panel rejected it. Of course. He opened the housing and crossed 2 contacts with a screwdriver. Sparks snapped blue across his knuckles. The lock clicked. Cold air rolled through the opening. Inside, emergency lights painted everything dull crimson. Frost covered the walls. A young woman sat against a refrigeration unit with her knees drawn close, silver-white hair falling across skin the color of pale, turquoise glass. A dark restraint collar circled her neck. Her amber eyes tracked Ethan carefully. Not frightened. Measuring him. You're human, she whispered. Last time I checked. Ethan crouched several feet away. His wrist scanner found her temperature dangerously low. He removed his thermal coat and held it toward her. She stared at it. Take it. Why? Ethan glanced at the countdown. Because you're freezing. That answer seemed to confuse her more than anything else. She finally accepted the coat. Ethan turned toward the wall terminal, hoping to find her evacuation assignment. The refugee manifest appeared. 37 entries. 36 were marked deceased. The final line made him stop breathing for half a second. Lyra Vera. Unclaimed. Transfer denied. Delete record after departure. Ethan read it again. Delete record. Not archive. Not transfer. Delete. Behind him, the girl slowly stood, wrapping his oversized coat around her shoulders. You should leave, she said. Someone clearly thinks I should. I mean without me. Ethan looked at her restraint collar, then at the deliberately sealed door. The station trembled again. Dust whispered from the ceiling. His display chimed. 15 minutes. Who put you in here? Her expression closed instantly. It doesn't matter. It matters a little. Not if you want to live. Ethan studied the manifest one last time, then disconnected the terminal cable. The screen went black. Lyra's amber eyes widened. What did you do? Made the system forget I opened the door. He picked up his tool bag. Can you walk? Human. Her voice sharpened. You don't understand. If they discover you helped me, then we should probably move. For several seconds, she simply stared at him. Outside, the evacuation announcement repeated its final boarding warning. Ethan stepped into the corridor, then noticed she wasn't following. He turned back and held out his hand. Ethan Cole. Her gaze dropped to his hand, as though the gesture belonged to some civilization she had only read about. Slowly, she placed her turquoise fingers in his. Lyra, she said. Just Lyra. Ethan nodded and pulled her gently toward the light. He did not know why an entire station had been ordered to forget her. He did not know who had locked that door. He only knew one thing. Someone had decided Lyra Vera should disappear. And with 15 minutes left before Orison 9 began shutting down, an ordinary human maintenance technician had just decided otherwise. The corridor lights died for 3 seconds, and when they returned, Lyra was still holding Ethan's hand. He noticed that before anything else. Not the evacuation alarm. Not the vibration traveling through the deck plates. Her fingers were cold, almost weightless against his palm, yet she refused to let go. Shuttle Bay 3 is 900 feet from here, Ethan said, checking the station map on his wrist display. Main corridor is sealed. We take maintenance access. Lyra looked toward the narrow service hatch ahead. That passage is not on the public map. Good thing I am not the public. He pulled the hatch open. Warm air carrying the smell of machine oil drifted out. Ethan climbed inside first, dragging his tool bag behind him. Lyra followed carefully. The passage was barely 4 feet high, forcing Ethan to move on his hands and knees between bundles of insulated cable. Pipes clicked as pressure dropped across the station. Every few seconds, a distant mechanical thump traveled through the metal around them. You maintain this entire station? Lyra asked. Me and 27 other technicians. Where are they? Ethan hesitated. Hopefully already on evacuation shuttles. His display chimed. 12 minutes. He increased his pace. They reached a junction where a ventilation fan had stopped, blocking the shortest route. Ethan removed the access cover and examined the motor. How long? Lyra asked. 2 minutes. You said we have 12. That is why 2 is acceptable. He pulled a compact driver from his bag and bypassed the burned controller. Lyra watched his hands move through wires and connectors. You could have left me. You mentioned that. You had authorization to evacuate. Ethan tightened a terminal. Still do. And I do not. We will fix that. Why? The fan suddenly turned, pushing warm air through the passage. Ethan replaced the cover and kept moving. Because paperwork is a terrible reason to leave somebody in a freezer. Lyra said nothing after that. They emerged near Shuttle Bay 3 as the final boarding announcement echoed through the station. Hundreds of evacuees moved behind security barriers. Families carried bags. Cargo drones rolled toward loading ramps. Beyond the observation windows, Orizen's blue-white star burned against the darkness. Ethan approached a registration terminal and entered his identification. His name appeared immediately. Ethan Cole. Evacuation priority. Essential personnel. Seat 47B. He entered Lyra's name. Nothing. He tried again. The terminal flashed red. Record not found. Lyra stood behind him, wrapped in his gray thermal coat. I told you. Ethan opened the administrative menu. And I told you we would fix it. He connected his maintenance interface and created a temporary dependent record. The system processed for several seconds. Then the screen changed. Evacuation capacity reached. No additional passengers. Ethan stared at the message. Problem? Lyra asked quietly. He checked the shuttle manifest. Every seat was occupied. Every emergency restraint assigned. No standing passengers were permitted during launch. The station trembled harder this time. Overhead lights shifted from amber to red. 9 minutes. Ethan looked at Lyra, then at his own boarding authorization, then back at the terminal. He touched one command. Transfer seat 47B. Lyra's wrist tag chimed. Her temporary identification turned green. She looked down at it, then slowly raised her eyes. What did you do? Ethan disconnected his interface. Congratulations. You have a window seat. And you? He closed his tool bag. I know this station better than anyone still standing here. There is an old utility tug in Dock 6. If its reactor works, I have another way out. If machines like making life interesting. Lyra stared at him as boarding personnel called the final passengers forward. Around them, strangers hurried toward safety. Ethan pointed toward the shuttle ramp. Go. She did not move. Lyra. Her amber eyes remained fixed on him. For the first time since he had opened that frozen room, the guarded distance in them disappeared. You gave me your place. Ethan shrugged once. You needed it. The boarding doors began to close. Lyra looked at the shuttle, then at Ethan. A warning tone sounded. 7 minutes remained. Ethan expected her to run toward the ramp. Instead, she reached for the release beside the emergency access gate, stepped away from seat 47B, and walked back toward him. What are you doing? He asked. Lyra handed him the green wrist tag. Making life interesting. The shuttle doors sealed without them. Ethan watched through the observation glass as the docking clamps released and the vessel drifted away from Orizen 9, its engines glowing white against the black. For half a second, the station became strangely quiet. Then the emergency system announced, primary evacuation complete. Remaining personnel proceed to designated shelters. Ethan looked at Lyra. You know that was the last shuttle. Yes. And you still came back. Yes. That was a terrible decision. Lyra pulled his thermal coat tighter around herself. I learned from a human. Ethan almost smiled. Almost. His wrist display showed 6 minutes until the station entered automatic isolation. Dock 6 was nearly half a mile away through sections, already losing power. Come on. They ran. Red emergency lights swept across empty corridors. Abandoned luggage rested beside benches. A cleaning drone continued polishing the same 6 feet of floor, apparently unaware that everyone had left. Ethan led Lyra through a maintenance stairwell and down 2 levels. The tug is old, he said between breaths. How old? Old enough that nobody wanted it. That does not inspire confidence. Neither does staying here. They reached Dock 6 with 4 minutes remaining. Beyond the pressure window sat a compact utility vessel covered in faded orange paint. Its identification read Mule 7. Lyra stopped. That is a spacecraft. Technically, it looks like machinery someone forgot to throw away. Ethan glanced at her. I am beginning to notice a theme today. He opened the airlock with his maintenance credentials. Inside, the tug smelled of dust, lubricant, and stale recycled air. Ethan dropped into the pilot's seat and activated the console. Nothing happened. Lyra stared at him. Is this the part where the machine makes life interesting? Give it a second. He struck the auxiliary power switch. A weak green light appeared. The reactor diagnostic loaded slowly. Coolant pressure low. Ignition circuit offline. Ethan opened a panel beneath the controls and reached inside. I need the blue cable. Lyra crouched beside the tool bag. There are 12 blue cables. The thick one. There are 4 thick ones. Welcome to human engineering. She handed him one. Wrong connector. He shook his head. She tried another. That one. Ethan connected it across the damaged ignition relay. The console flickered awake. Outside, warning beacons began rotating around the dock. 2 minutes. Reactor temperature rising. Lyra said, reading the display. How high is acceptable? Anything below 800 degrees Fahrenheit. It says 812. Still negotiating. With whom? Physics. Ethan adjusted the coolant valves manually. The temperature dropped. 806. 801. 794. See, he said. Physics blinked first. Lyra made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was small, almost surprised, as though she had forgotten she could make it. The sound vanished when another message appeared across the navigation screen. External command request. Aurelian encryption filled the display. Lyra went completely still. Ethan noticed. Friends of yours? No, that answer came quickly. The incoming signal repeated. This time the tug translated part of the authorization code. Imperial security channel. Ethan slowly turned toward her. Lyra's amber eyes reflected the green console lights. You said your name was Lyra. It is. You forgot to mention Imperial security was looking for you. You did not ask. I also did not ask whether somebody had deliberately erased your records. But today has been full of surprises. The station announced 60 seconds until isolation. Ethan started the engines. Mule 7 groaned awake. Dock clamps released one by one. The Imperial signal changed. Priority, transmission. Identify passenger Lyra Vera. Ethan stared at the message. Beside him, Lyra whispered, If you answer them, they will take me. He looked at her restraint collar, his coat around her shoulders, and the fear she was trying very hard not to show. 30 seconds. Ethan reached toward the communications panel. Lyra lowered her eyes. He switched the transmitter off. Then we are not answering. Her head lifted. You do not even know who I am. Ethan pushed the throttle forward as the dock doors opened onto a field of stars. I know your name. Mule 7 slipped free of Horizon, 9 with 12 seconds remaining. Behind them, the station disappeared into emergency darkness. Ahead, far beyond the tug's scratched windshield, a massive silver vessel turned toward them. Lyra stared at it without breathing. Ethan checked the engines. Then he saw the emblem glowing across the approaching ship. A golden crown surrounded by 9 stars. Whatever Lyra had been running from had found her. The silver vessel did not fire. That worried Ethan more than if it had. It simply followed, enormous and silent, while Mule 7 pushed away from Horizon, 9 on engines that sounded like a washing machine full of bolts. Ethan watched the distance indicator. 22 miles. 21.8. They are gaining. Lyra stood behind the co-pilot station, one hand resting on the seat. They do not need to hurry. Comforting. Ethan opened the navigation database. Most nearby routes required a functional jump drive, which Mule 7 had not possessed in 12 years. One option remained. A maintenance corridor through the debris field surrounding Horizon's outer moon. That route is marked unsafe, Lyra said. That is why they will expect us to avoid it. And will we? Ethan turned the tug toward the moon. Absolutely not. Chunks of ice and abandoned construction material filled the windshield. Ethan reduced power and guided Mule 7 between them. The pursuing vessel remained outside the field. Lyra watched the sensor display. They are waiting. Smart. You sound disappointed. I was hoping your mysterious friends were bad at their jobs. She looked away. Ethan noticed the movement, but did not press. A warning light blinked across his console. Fuel pressure. He opened another panel. Hold this. He handed Lyra a small diagnostic meter. She took it as though he had given her an artifact from an extinct civilization. What am I holding? My last good pressure tester. What does it do? Tells me which expensive part is ruining my day. Ethan connected the probe to the fuel regulator. The meter chirped. Read the number. 31. That is bad. How bad? We are supposed to have 60. Lyra frowned at the machinery. Can the regulator be repaired? Eventually. How long? About an hour. We do not have an hour. Ethan smiled faintly. You are learning. He removed a bypass valve and replaced it with a spare from the environmental system. The cabin temperature immediately dropped several degrees. Lyra noticed. You took that from the heater. Fuel is more useful than comfort. You already gave me your coat. I have layers. You are wearing one shirt. A very optimistic shirt. This time her laugh came more easily. It lasted only a second, but Ethan heard it. The pressure climbed to 53. Good enough. Mule 7 continued through the debris field. For several minutes, only the engine spoke. Then Lyra asked, "Why did you give me your seat?" Ethan kept his eyes on the navigation display. We covered this. No. You gave me an answer. I asked for a reason. Same thing. Not where I come from. Ethan adjusted their course around a tumbling section of metal nearly 60 feet long. You needed the seat. You needed it too. Apparently, I found another one. This is not a seat. This is a maintenance tug held together by spare parts. Now you are insulting my ship. You called it machinery someone forgot to throw away. I am allowed to insult it. I am fixing it. Lyra studied him in silence. Among my people, every gift creates an obligation. Ethan finally looked at her. That sounds exhausting. It creates order. Maybe. He returned his attention to the controls. But I did not give you anything so you would owe me. Her expression changed almost imperceptibly. Then what do you expect? Nothing. The words seemed to land harder than any speech could have. Lyra looked down at the diagnostic meter in her hands. Nobody expects nothing. I do. A proximity alarm interrupted them. Ethan checked the sensors. 3 smaller contacts had entered the debris field behind them. The Imperial vessel had stopped waiting. Lyra's face became still again. They sent retrieval craft. Ethan killed the cabin lights. Darkness swallowed the tug except for the dim green instruments. Good. Good. Big ships have good sensors. Small ships have worse ones. He reduced the reactor output until Mule 7 was barely warmer than the surrounding debris. The engines fell silent. They drifted between ice and forgotten metal while 3 search craft moved closer. Lyra whispered, "What happens if they find us?" Ethan watched the sensor dots approach. "Then I finally ask you what this is really about." 1 contact passed within 800 feet. Another moved above them. The 3rd stopped. Ethan held perfectly still. Beside him, Lyra did the same. Then the communications console illuminated by itself. A transmission forced its way through the disabled receiver. A woman's voice filled the dark cabin, calm and formal. "Lyra Vera, by authority of the Aurelian Regency, you are ordered to surrender immediately." Ethan slowly turned toward her. Lyra closed her eyes. The voice continued. "The surviving heir to the Imperial House must be returned." Ethan stared at the woman wearing his old gray coat. "Lyra," he said quietly, "you definitely forgot to mention something." "Surviving heir?" Ethan repeated. The words felt too large for Mule 7's cramped cockpit. Lyra did not answer. Outside, 3 retrieval craft drifted among the debris, their search beams sliding across broken metal and ice. Ethan reached for the receiver and cut its power manually. The voice vanished. Silence returned, broken only by the soft ticking of cooling machinery. "You should turn me over," Lyra said. Ethan looked at her. "That is an interesting way to begin an explanation. They will offer you money." "I have money." She glanced around the aging tug. "Do you?" Ethan considered the cracked console beside him. That was unnecessarily accurate. Lyra almost smiled, but the expression disappeared. She lowered herself into the co-pilot seat. In the faint green instrument light, her turquoise skin looked nearly gray. "My mother was the younger sister of Emperor Kalen Vera. When he died, succession should have passed through our branch of the family. Should have. The Regency Council preferred someone easier to control. Ethan listened. So they erased you. First they erased my title, then my citizenship, then every record proving I belonged to the Imperial House. Her fingers touched the dark collar around her neck. Horizon, 9 was supposed to be the final step. Ethan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. And the people outside. Some believe they are protecting the Empire. Some are protecting themselves. It no longer matters. It matters if they are chasing my extremely valuable antique spacecraft. Lyra gave him a tired look. You make jokes at strange times. Mostly bad times. Good times do not need the help. One of the sensor contacts moved past them. Ethan waited until its signal faded, then slowly restored minimal power. The cabin heater remained offline. He rubbed his hands together and checked their oxygen reserve. 6 hours. Fuel for perhaps 9 if he kept the reactor below 40%. Not enough to reach a populated route. Lyra watched him calculate. You regret helping me. It was not a question. Ethan opened a storage compartment and removed 2 emergency ration packs. He handed one to her. No, you lost your evacuation seat. Yes. You are being pursued by an Imperial vessel. Also yes. Your ship barely functions. Ethan looked offended. Mule 7 is sensitive about criticism. Lyra stared at the ration pack. And still you say no. Ethan tore open his meal. Regret would not improve the fuel situation. For a while they ate without speaking. Beyond the windshield, the stars moved slowly between drifting pieces of ice. No alarms. No announcements. Just 2 people sitting inside a forgotten tug while an empire searched for one of them. They never called me Lyra, she said eventually. Ethan looked over. Who? My family. The court. My tutors. I was Lady Vera, Imperial daughter, successor candidate, strategic asset. Her voice softened. Even when I was a child, my name belonged to ceremonies. Ethan folded the empty ration wrapper carefully. Sounds lonely. Loneliness was considered irrelevant. He nodded toward the navigation display. Where do you want to go? Lyra blinked. What? We need a destination. You are asking me? You are the one being chased. People usually decide where I am supposed to go. Ethan leaned back. I am not people usually. Her eyes moved toward the star map. Several routes glowed across the display. For the first time since he had found her, nobody was ordering her toward a door, a shuttle, a prison, or a throne. Ethan simply waited. Lyra slowly raised one hand and touched a point near the edge of the system. There, she said. An old communications relay. My mother once told me it could transmit beyond Regency-controlled networks. Ethan entered the coordinates. There it is. You will take me? You chose it. Lyra stared at those 3 words as though they meant something Ethan could not see. Then the corner of her mouth lifted. Small. Real. Thank you, Ethan Cole. He restarted the engines at minimum power. Mule 7 began drifting toward the distant relay. Just Ethan. She looked at him. Something quiet changed behind her amber eyes. Then just Lyra, she said. And in the darkness between worlds, stripped of titles and records, and everything an empire had decided she was worth, her own name finally sounded like it belonged to her. The communications relay appeared 4 hours later as a thin silver cross against the stars, rotating slowly above Horizon's outermost moon. Ethan had expected something larger. Instead, Relay 12 looked like a radio tower somebody had thrown into space and forgotten for 50 years. Please tell me that thing still works, he said. Lyra studied the weak telemetry scrolling across her display. It has power. That was not my question. I am learning from you. Ethan gave her a sideways look. That is concerning. Mule 7 approached at minimum thrust. Fuel reserves had fallen below 30%. Cabin temperature hovered near 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and Ethan could see his breath whenever the heater cycled off. Lyra still wore his gray thermal coat. Neither mentioned it. The relay accepted their docking request automatically. Magnetic clamps pulled Mule 7 against the service port with a dull metallic thump. Ethan began preparing the transmitter when the proximity alarm sounded. 1 contact, then 3, then 7. Aurelian retrieval craft emerged from behind the moon. Lyra's expression changed immediately. They predicted the relay. Or tracked us. Ethan checked the tug systems. No active beacon. No navigation broadcast. Then his eyes moved to the restraint collar around Lyra's neck. Hold still. She froze as he brought his scanner near the collar. A signal pulsed every 12 seconds. Tiny. almost invisible beneath the relay's background radiation. Ethan exhaled. There you are. A tracker. Very expensive one. Lyra touched the collar. Can you remove it? Not safely in 5 minutes. A transmission arrived. This one was addressed directly to Ethan. Human technician Ethan Cole. By order of the Aurelian Regency, release Lyra Vera into authorized custody. You will receive safe passage, full compensation, and transportation to any human territory of your choosing. A number appeared beneath the message. Ethan stared at it. Lyra did too. That is more money than I have earned in my entire life, he said. Several times more, Lyra replied. You calculated that quickly. I was educated in state finance. Useful skill. The offer increased. Lyra quietly removed his coat and folded it across the co-pilot's seat. Accept it. Ethan looked at her. No, Ethan. Still no. Listen to me. You have already lost your evacuation route because of me. Your employment will be questioned. Your government may decide you created an international incident. They are offering you a way home. And what are they offering you? Lyra said nothing. That was enough. She stood and walked toward the airlock. Ethan reached the control panel first and entered a maintenance lockout. The door turned red. Lyra stared at him. Open it. Cannot. You just locked it. Technical complication. Ethan. Lyra. Her composure finally cracked. You do not understand what you are refusing. Ethan leaned against the console. Then explain it. Safety. Money. Your old life. My old life involved replacing air filters on Horizon 9. It was yours. That stopped him. Lyra lowered her voice. You gave me a choice when nobody else would. I will not repay that by taking yours away. She entered a command into the airlock panel. It rejected her. So I am choosing to go. Ethan studied her for a long moment. Then he opened the system map and transferred navigation authority to the co-pilot console. Lyra frowned. What are you doing? Giving your choice back. The star map appeared before her. One route led toward the Aurelian craft, another toward open space. A third connected Mule 7 to Relay 12. If you want to leave, Ethan said, I will open that door. If you want to surrender, I will transmit the coordinates myself. But do not walk out there because you think my life is worth more than yours. Lyra looked at the 3 routes. You barely know me. I knew enough in the freezer. The approaching craft were now less than 40 miles away. A warning tone began counting down their arrival. Lyra's hand hovered above the controls. Then she selected Relay 12. Ethan nodded once. No celebration. No speech. He opened his tool bag. All right. We transmit whatever evidence you have, then disappear. There is something else, Lyra said. Ethan paused. From beneath the restraint collar, she pulled a tiny crystalline data shard hidden against her skin. This contains the succession archive. Names. Orders. Records the Regency believed were destroyed. Ethan stared at the shard. So that is why they want you. Lyra shook her head. No. This is why they cannot allow anyone to hear me. Outside the windshield, 7 Aurelian craft changed formation and accelerated toward the relay. Ethan picked up his tools. Then we should make sure somebody hears you. Relay 12 woke one system at a time. First came the navigation lights, pale white against the darkness. Then the transmitter array began rotating toward deep space with a slow mechanical hum that Ethan could feel through Mule 7's deck. Connection established, Lyra said. Uploading the archive. A progress indicator appeared on the console. 3%. Ethan checked the approaching contacts. 28 miles. How long? 9 minutes. We have about 4. Lyra looked at him. Can you make it faster? I fix air recyclers. I do not negotiate with the speed of light. He opened the relay diagnostics anyway. Most of the station's transmission capacity was being wasted on automatic navigation broadcasts that nobody had used in decades. Ethan smiled. Actually, I might negotiate a little. He redirected power from the beacon, weather telemetry, and docking guidance into the long-range transmitter. Lights across the relay went dark. Upload speed doubled. 12%. 18. The Aurelian craft crossed 20 miles. A new message appeared. Transmission must cease. Ethan ignored it. Another followed. Final authorization for Ethan Cole. Full immunity and compensation upon compliance. They really want me to retire early, he said. Lyra did not smile. She was staring at the archive. Names streamed across the display. Officials. Witnesses. Orders. Dates. evidence that an entire succession had been rewritten by people who believed nobody outside their circle would ever see the original record. 39%. Once this reaches the public network, Lyra said, there is no returning to what came before. Ethan tightened a power coupling. Was what came before worth returning to? She looked at him for a moment. No, there you go. 48%. The relay suddenly shook. Not an impact. A remote command had activated its shutdown protocol. The transmitter began folding inward. They have administrative control, Lyra said. Ethan pulled up the relay architecture. Not for long. What are you doing? Making us very unpopular with whoever designed this thing. He disconnected the remote management channel and routed control through Mule 7's maintenance bus. The transmitter stopped folding. 56%. Then every console on the tug flickered. The fuel regulator alarm returned. Pressure dropped from 53 to 41. 36. Ethan opened the floor panel. Keep the upload running. Ethan, the engines. I noticed. He climbed into the narrow service space beneath the cockpit. Heat pressed against his face. The improvised bypass valve was failing. He reached deeper, trying to secure the coupling while the tug vibrated around him. 68%, Lyra called. Contacts at 9 miles. Plenty of time. That is clearly not true. I was trying optimism. The coupling slipped again. Ethan shut down the port engine before the regulator could overload. Mule 7 went still. One engine remained. Barely enough for controlled flight. Ethan. Lyra's voice had changed. They are almost here. He climbed back into the cockpit. 79%. The Aurelian craft now surrounded the relay at a careful distance. They did not need force. They only needed time. A docking request appeared. Then another. Lyra removed the crystalline shard from the console. The archive is copied into the relay buffer. You can finish transmitting without me. Ethan understood immediately. No, they want me, not you. We already had this conversation. And now the circumstances are different. No, the numbers are different. Lyra looked toward the airlock. If I board their vessel, they may give you enough time. Ethan stepped between her and the door. Do not make me your reason. She froze. His voice softened. Do not survive because I happened to open a door. Survive because somebody decided you should not. 88%. The words seemed to settle somewhere deeper than fear. Lyra turned back toward the console. 92. 95. A warning filled the cockpit. External docking override detected. Ethan locked every mechanical clamp manually. 98. Lyra placed both hands on the transmitter controls. 99. For one impossible second, nothing moved. Then the screen turned white. Archive distributed. 12 independent network confirmations appeared across the display. Then 20. Then 50. The truth was no longer aboard Mule 7. It was everywhere. Lyra stared at the confirmations as if she had forgotten how to breathe. Ethan dropped into the pilot seat and restarted the remaining engine. Transmission complete, he said. Now we leave. On one engine? I have left places under worse conditions. When Ethan pushed the throttle forward. I will invent an example later. Mule 7 separated from Relay 12 and turned toward the moon's shadow. Behind them, the retrieval craft hesitated. Their mission had changed. The secret they had crossed the system to contain no longer existed as a secret. Lyra looked at Ethan, then at the stars opening ahead. For the first time, the Empire was no longer deciding where she went next. 8 years later, Ethan Cole was lying beneath an air recycler when the stars disappeared. He noticed because the service bay floor had a narrow window running along one wall. In one moment, it showed the familiar black above Haven Crossport, and the next it reflected hundreds of silver shapes arriving almost simultaneously. Ethan stopped turning his wrench. That seems expensive. His apprentice, 20-year-old Mason Reed, leaned toward the window. Mr. Cole, those are Imperial ships. I gathered that from the Imperial symbols. Ethan slid out from beneath the machine and sat up. At 42, he had more gray at his temples and a permanent collection of small tools clipped around his belt. His hands still smelled like coolant and machine oil. Some things survived 8 years unchanged. Others did not. After Relay 12, the Aurelian Succession Archive had spread across public networks faster than anyone could contain it. Investigations followed. Governments changed. Alliances shifted. Ethan had answered questions for months before returning to the only work he understood without needing a translator: keeping machines alive. Lyra had disappeared into history. At first, messages reached him through intermediaries. Then fewer came. Then none. Ethan understood. A woman reclaiming an empire probably had limited time for a maintenance technician who argued with fuel regulators. He had kept one thing from those days, an old temporary identification tag marked Lyra Vyra. It stayed inside his toolbox beneath a collection of spare fuses. Outside, Haven Crossport erupted with announcements. All personnel remain calm. Aurelian diplomatic arrival in progress. Mason looked at Ethan. Diplomatic? There must be 300 ships up there. Maybe they are very diplomatic. The station manager appeared in the doorway, breathing hard. Cole, main landing field. Now, the recycler still has a pressure problem. The Empress requested you by name. Ethan became very still. Mason's mouth opened. Ethan wiped his hands on a shop towel. Which Empress? The manager stared at him. How many do you know? 20 minutes later, Ethan stood near landing platform 1 wearing the cleanest work jacket he owned. Thousands of station personnel lined the observation galleries. A black and silver shuttle descended without sound and settled onto the platform. Its ramp lowered. Imperial guards emerged first, their polished uniforms catching the blue landing lights. Officials followed. Then everyone around Ethan bowed. He saw her between two rows of guards. Lyra moved with the quiet certainty of someone who no longer needed permission to enter any room in the galaxy. Her turquoise skin had deepened slightly with age. Her silver-white hair was arranged beneath a narrow ceremonial crown. The frightened woman from the freezer was gone. Yet Ethan recognized her before anyone announced her name. She walked toward him. Ethan remembered protocol just in time and began to bow. Do not. Her voice stopped him. He looked up. Amber eyes met his. 8 years vanished. Hello, Ethan. He searched for something appropriately diplomatic. You brought a lot of ships. A familiar smile appeared. You still make jokes at strange times. Good times still do not need the help. For 1 second, she was simply Lyra again. Then Ethan noticed something around her wrist. A scratched strip of metal, carefully restored but unmistakably old. The temporary identification band he had repaired on Horizon 9. You kept it, he said. Lyra touched the band gently. You were the first person who repaired something with my name on it instead of deleting it. Ethan could not answer that. Behind her stood admirals, ministers, and representatives from worlds he had never visited. Every one of them waited for her next word. Lyra looked past Ethan toward the maintenance bay, where workers in stained uniforms watched from behind the glass. 8 years ago, she said quietly, you asked where I wanted to go. Ethan remembered the star map between them. 3 routes. 1 choice. I remember. She extended her hand. Not an imperial command. Not a ceremony. The same simple gesture he had offered beside a frozen storage room. Today, she said, I came here because I wanted to. Ethan looked at her hand, then took it. The crowd remained bowed around them. Lyra did not look at the crowd. She looked only at the ordinary human who had once called her by her name when an empire had tried to make sure nobody remembered it. The first thing Lyra gave Ethan was not a medal, a title, or a fortune. It was his old coat. She carried it herself into a quiet observation room above Haven Crossport, folded inside a clear preservation case. The gray fabric had faded. One sleeve still carried a dark repair patch near the elbow. Ethan stared at it for several seconds. You kept that too? I kept everything from Horizon 9 that reminded me I had existed there. Lyra opened the case and lifted the coat carefully. For years, this was the only object I owned that had been given without expectation. Ethan touched the worn fabric. 8 years disappeared again. He remembered frost on turquoise skin, red emergency lights, a locked steel door. It was a cheap thermal coat. To you. Lyra placed it in his hands. Beyond the glass, her fleet filled the sky like a second constellation. There is something else. A holographic document appeared above the table. Ethan expected a royal appointment. Instead, he saw rows of legal language translated into English. At the top were 4 words, the recognized person's ACT. What is this? He asked. My first imperial law. Lyra moved beside the window. No person within Aurelian territory can be classified as unclaimed. Refugees cannot be removed from civil records without independent review. Children without guardians receive permanent identity protection. Prisoners retain names, citizenship records, and legal representation. No administrator can erase a life because that life became inconvenient. Ethan slowly looked up. Lyra's amber eyes remained on the stars. We have registered more than 11 million people under its protection. The number settled between them. Ethan thought about one frozen storage room, one broken terminal, one name scheduled for deletion. 11 million? And growing. Lyra, I did not do that. She turned toward him. Neither did I alone. Her voice was quiet. You showed me the difference between being processed and being seen. I wrote that difference into law. Ethan looked down at the code in his hands. He had spent most of his life repairing systems one component at a time. A valve, a filter, a damaged wire. He understood small consequences. He had never learned what to do with consequences measured in millions. The Imperial Council prepared several rewards for you, Lyra continued. An estate, a permanent pension, an honorary position at court. Ethan sighed. There it is. I rejected the honorary position myself. You would hate court. Finally, some competent leadership. She laughed, and for a moment the Empress disappeared. There was only Lyra, sitting inside a failing maintenance tug, learning how humans joked when they were afraid. The others remain available, she said. Ethan shook his head. Keep them. Ethan, I mean it. You could have anything. He looked through the glass at the workers below, moving cargo beneath the shadow of Imperial ships. I already have a job. Your air recycler is broken. Exactly. People need me. Lyra studied him with the same expression she had worn 8 years earlier when he gave away seat 47B. You truly expect nothing. I thought we settled that. A soft announcement called the Empress back to her delegation. Neither moved immediately. Finally, Lyra extended her hand. Ethan began to bow from habit. She caught his hand before he could. I told you not to do that. There are approximately 300 ships outside suggesting I should. Let them wait. Through the observation glass, thousands of people remained below. Some bowed to the Empress. Some simply watched. Lyra held Ethan's hand for another quiet second, then released it and walked toward the door. She stopped before leaving. Ethan. Yeah. I was never forgotten after you found me. The door closed softly behind her. Ethan stood alone with the old gray code in his hands. Outside, the Imperial fleet began turning toward the stars. He had never conquered a world, never commanded an army, never asked history to remember his name. Years ago, he had simply opened a locked door because someone was cold on the other side. And somewhere across an empire of countless lights, 11 million people could no longer be erased because one ordinary human had once decided that one forgotten life was worth remembering.